Hello and assalamu alaikum everyone. I am Kashif Kamran and today I am discussing with you the examiner expectation around prioritizing audit risk and risk of material misstatement in the question number 1 for advanced audit and assurance. Now you must all be familiar that since September 2022 exams, examiner question has changed and the wording of the examiner question is very critical to understand exactly what the examiner is demanding from the students. Now, if you look at the question in front of your screen and you critically evaluate the question, it says evaluate number 1 and prioritize number 2, the significant audit risk or the risk of material misstatement. Now, are we meeting the expectation of the examiner in terms of critical terminologies being used across this question set? Number 1, evaluate. Number 2, prioritize. Number 3, significant. If you're not meeting the expectation around 1, 2, 3, you're not fetching good marks in the question set around risk, which takes most of the marks in the first question. How many times you just go through this requirement and you fail to understand it or you fail to deliver as per the expectation of the examiner? Now, I will be doing a series of sessions on it, but my first one today is just to focus on what exactly the examiner wants from you in terms of prioritizing the risk, because that is very crucial. And I would share with you the examiner feedback from the latest June 2023 examiner report, where the examiner has given the perspective about what the examiner means when the examiner says prioritize the significant risk. Now, there could be multiple judgments around significance and how you think about significance of a risk in exam paper. You know there is a materiality threshold given in the question number 1, which you need to work on, and you can define the significance of a risk versus the materiality threshold. If you think a certain risk given in the exam paper is above the materiality threshold, it is automatically significant. There could be other dimensions to significance. For example, there is something new in the structure of the case study. Something is happening for the first time. For example, there is a change of accounting policy, or for example, the company has acquired a subsidiary for the first time during the year. There could be something happening in the organization for the first time and it has an impact on the financial statement. So anything new is also significant. Or there is a certain specific risk of management bias in the question, which is linkable. For example, the question tells you that the director's performance, director's bonus are linked with certain performance indicators. Now, if that specifically is given in the question, then there is a potential risk of management bias in manipulating those performance indicators for better bonuses. And those particular performance indicators comes under a significant risk of material misstatement, either under or overstatement in terms of management achieving higher bonuses. Or in an audit risk question, it could be a first-year audit. And in a first-year audit, in an audit risk question, it could be a detection risk, which is a very significant risk because it results in a failure of auditor, or it results in auditor overlooking the material misstatements and financial statement due to less knowledge of business. So there could be different dimensions to significance, estimates, provisions. We know wherever there is estimates involved in the financial statement, it automatically become of significance to the auditor because there is a greater chances of misstatements in estimates because there is a greater chance of management bias. Subjectivity comes in. Anything new, a new audit client or a change of accounting policy and something which is significant in terms of its quantitative impact on the financial statement. So that is significance, right? Now, you read through a case and you read through examiner situations given to you in the case in a top-down manner. And when you're reading top-down, you will come across different types of risk given in the case study, some around accounting treatments, rather most of them around accounting treatments, or something about a first year audit, or something about control weaknesses or control deficiencies. But we know most of the time when you look at a AAA scenario around audit risk and ROM, it's like 90%, 95% moving around accounting treatments, where you need to find the significance either in terms of estimates or subjectivity or something being done for the first time, or its quantitative materiality. First year audit, yes, that's the statement which we normally find in the opening para, intro para. It is like 3 out of 4 exam settings. We do find something about controls, again, in 1 out of 3 exam settings or 1 out of 4 exam setting. Not much emphasis we get in every exam setting on controls, but it's like 1 out of 4. Now, knowing how to pick risk, how to write them down, and how to go about developing a good, reasonable paragraph on each risk, because each risk since September 22 exam is now worth 3 marks. So for 3 marks, ideally, you are writing a reasonable paragraph, which could be 4 to 5 sentences long, depending upon if that particular risk has an involvement of an accounting treatment. But if it is a first year audit risk, it might just be wrapped up in like 2 sentences, 3 max. If it is an accounting standard area, and depending upon which accounting standard are we talking about, it could go up to 4 to 5 sentences. So it will vary, but your point has to be well developed. Now, the problem is that when the student is attacking this question, and I'll be doing a series of sessions on it on the first question, the issue comes with the prioritization, because you might be writing the risk in the order you're getting in the case study. So whichever risk you find first, you write it first, then second, then third, then fourth. So you're going in the order or the flow of the case study. Or a student might be writing the risk in the order which is most important in terms of materialities, where he writes the risk with the highest value first, then the second highest value, then the third highest value, then the fourth highest value, because arranging the risk up and down is very easier because you're doing a computer-based exam. So you can just shuffle them up and down even after you wrote them. So you can just bring things up and down very easily in a computer-based exam. Now, whichever way you're going with, either you're going in the top-down manner versus the case, or you are just arranging the risk in the order of their priorities from being highest in terms of the quantitative value to the lowest in terms of the quantitative value versus the materiality threshold. What is the problem? The problem is with the prioritization. And this is where the examiner report for June 23 becomes very critical. I will be investigating it and will be showing you an example in line with examiner report, just to give you a better idea, how would you go about prioritizing risk in your upcoming exams. Now, this is right from the June 23 examiner report, word to word. The very first thing the examiner tells us, it says it was disappointing to see that few candidates attempted any prioritization of the risk as specifically requested. Few attempted prioritization. So definitely that is something to disappoint the examining team, that they have given you so much awareness about how to prioritize. They have written an article on exam technique under the syllabus area D, how to write a good audit risk answer, how to write a good risk of material misstatement answer, even how to write a good business risk answer. We're not discussing that currently, but those articles have been published by the examining team to give you a guidance about how to prioritize. But even if you're still not doing it, it is frustration for the examining team. And they have shown a real disappointment that the students, very few of them, attempted any prioritization of the risk as requested. Now let's see what they want to discuss with you. Professional marks were available to the candidates who attempted this requirement. So if you're prioritizing, you're taking those professional skill marks, which are 10 in the question number 1, and there are professional skill marks for evaluation and judgment. So if you exercise your judgment around prioritization, or if you exercise your judgment around significance, evaluating the significance. You're fetching not just the technical marks, but you're fetching those professional marks. And I believe the big difference between passing and failing the AAA exam since September 22 is now how much you scored from professional side. Candidates were expected to identify the most significant risk, because the question was saying evaluate and prioritize the significant risk. So the question is expecting from you, this is the first expectation, to identify the most significant risk. Now, it will vary from me to you. It will vary from me to you and to many other students. Every one of us can have a different definition of most significant risk, because that's the judgment. That's where you have the professional marks, and there is no one correct judgment. Remember that. So it's not like you match the judgment of the examiner to fetch the marks. No, my judgment, your judgment, other student judgment, examiner judgment, or anyone attempting the AAA paper can have diversity of judgments. What is the examiner looking at is the judgment to reward you, whatever that is, because each student will have his or her own basis for judgment. So what is the examiner looking for is most significant risk. Now, for every student, that most will vary. For some, the most could be the quantitative top down, highest to lowest amounts. For some, it could be the first year audit. For some, it could be areas where estimate was involved. For some, it could be the areas where something was done for the first time. It was not in the last year. So there are different ways to go with most, and all of them are correct, because that's where the role of a manager comes in. You are a manager. So when you are a manager, you have to take your own decisions. So examining team is not looking at any specific answer here, but they're just looking at that you exercise your judgment. That's what they want at the end of the day, and provide a brief justification for their choice. So what is your justification of significance? Was it top down in terms of highest amount to lowest amount? Was it areas involving estimates? Was it something which came to the financial statement for the first time and they were not in the last year? What? So there could be variety of justifications to the word most. And this is what the examiner looking for. And each student justification will vary, but the justification has to be brief, 1 to 2 sentences, not more than that. Do you justify where and how? I'm coming to that. But look at the situation. The examiner says in the bullet number 3, candidates were expected. So are you meeting this expectation? That is the problem. To identify the most significant risk and then provide a brief justification for their choice. And I've given you so many examples, right, of that most significant would vary from student 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's see what is the examiner telling us about that. What can be the likely way of justifying and giving brief conclusions? Bullet number 4. Again, credit was awarded. Credit means the marks. The marks were awarded for candidates who offered a reasonable explanation. So anyone who offered a reasonable explanation were given credit, professional marks. And therefore, a range of possible explanation are valid. This is what is key. A range of possible explanation are valid. Look at the green box. This is the success here. Range of explanation. So my explanation and your explanation, or student 2, student 3, student 4, student 10 explanation will all differ, but there is no one answer. Range are possible. So is there any one way to conclude it? Is there any one way to define the significance? Is there one way to prioritize it? No. But what is the examining team looking for at the end of the day? A reasonable explanation. So if you have justified your basis of significance, you get 1 mark for the skill. If I justify my basis of significance, I'll get 1 mark for my skill, apart from technical. So each of us will have a different explanations. Look at the bullet number 5. candidates should be aware that this mark, that one single mark for exercising judgment as part of your professional skills, is for the act of attempting to justify the reason for prioritization. So what is your justification of prioritization? Why you took first year audit at number one, or why you took impairment at number one, or why you took the new accounting policy at number one, or what is your reasons? Because you took something at number one, number two, number three, so you can only explain that. I cannot explain it. So if I wrote something at 1, 2, 3, I know why I wrote something at 1, something at 2, something at 3, because something is going in my mind when I'm writing them in 1, 2, 3 order, prioritizing them. So who can give the basis of prioritization? You. So examiner is just looking for that basis, and there is no right and wrong answer. So it is just an act of attempting to justify the reason for the prioritization. Act of attempting, at least do that. So just writing 2 sentences and telling examiner, this is my basis of prioritization, whatever that is, you're getting +1 for your judgment. And that 1 can be a difference between 49 and 50. So act of attempting to justify the reason for prioritization. Do that. That is pretty simple. And again, range of possibilities. So there is no one right answer. And therefore, the examining team are not looking for a single correct reason. There can't be a single correct reason. There can't be. An examining team is putting that very clearly, that the examining team are not looking for a single correct reason. So there is not a single correct reason. So please try to justify what is your basis of prioritization, and it could be anything. It could be anything. But do give a basis of prioritization to get that 1 extra mark for exercising judgment about prioritization in the first question. So there are not looking for a single correct reason, or a reason which exactly match examiner. No. So a lot of times student gets obsessed with the examiner answer, and they start to rote learn examiner answer. They start to believe that I can only pass the AAA paper if I write exactly what the examiner write. Even though I have reinforced this issue number of times, try to give clarity on this reason multiple times, that it is not about writing exactly what the examiner writes. There could be a variety of ways to write one answer, and they could all be different, but still could be very, very impressive answers. So that's number 5th. Let's move on and see what are examples of that reasons, act of attempting to justify the reason. Is there any examples? Okay. Bullet number 6, option 1. Candidates can obtain these marks, the marks for evaluation and judgment, either by ordering their answer in priority order. So either you write your answer in priority order and stating this is the case. So you give a conclusion that I have wrote my answer, I have wrote my risk in the order of priority. Priority means quantitative. Priority means quantitative. So you will take the highest value risk at number 1, then the second highest value of risk, then the third highest value of risk. You know, in the exam, examiner do give you values, and you know your materiality. So you will take the highest value first, then the second highest value, then the third highest value, and you go putting them in order of that. And then you will tell in the reason that the reason is on the basis of quantitative materiality from highest to lowest. I think this is the easiest one you can do in exam paper. Arrange them from high to low in terms of amounts, and give that as a conclusion, that my conclusion is my prioritization is based upon assigning risk. My conclusion is based upon giving risk the priorities on the basis of the highest amount to the lowest amount. If you don't want to do this, or you have a second option. The second option given by the examiner, option number 2, by summarizing in a brief conclusion which risk or risks are most significant. If you don't want to go in the order of priority, highest amount, second highest amount, third highest amount, and then giving the conclusion that the risk above have been arranged from highest to lowest. If you don't want to go with option 1, then the option 2, write the risk in any order. Suppose you get the risk in the first paragraph, first year audit, you write that first. Then when you were reading through the case study, you get something about government grant, you write that. Then you were reading through the case, you get a new accounting policy, you write that. Then you were reading through the case, you get something about impairment of property, plant, and equipment, you write that. So you were just writing risk as you were getting them, whether they were not arranging them in any order, right? So option 2 is that. Option 2 is saying by summarizing in a brief conclusion, which risk or risk are most significant. Now, once you wrote like 5 risks, for example, and you wrap up your answer, at the conclusion of your answer, you will tell that out of the 5 you wrote above, which 2 or 3 of them are most significant and why? Not all 5 of them. Which 2 or 3 are more significant and why? So out of the 5 above, which 2 are important and why? So you have to give a justification for that. But in the option number 2, because you're not arranging them from the highest amount to the lowest amount, because giving a conclusion of that is pretty easier, because in the conclusion, you will say they have been arranged from highest quantitative amount to the lowest quantitative amount, and that's a simple conclusion. But in the option 2, because you're going scattered, but the conclusion at the end of the day, you will say from the list of above, these 2 are important and why, or these 3 are important and why. So you have to give a reason there. If any student is exercising the option 2, see what you need to do. Where a candidate use option 2 method, if a candidate does not state which one or 2 risks are most significant, but simply list some, this comma, this. You say, in conclusion, the risk A, comma, risk B, and risk C are most significant, full stop. No, you cannot just say this, and this are most significant, because you are not giving any justification. On what basis are they significant? So if any student takes an option 2, if a candidate does not state which 1 or 2 risks are most significant, but simply list some or all, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this will not be sufficient to get credit. So if you say the all risk above, A, B, C, D, and E are significant, full stop, happy. No, this will not make examiner happy. You will say in the list above, the risk A and B, or the risk in the list above, the risk C and D are significant because right reason. Why are they important? So are you giving a reason for all 5 risks? No, examiner is saying any 1 or 2. So you wrote 5 risks for your answer, for example, and out of the 5, you say these 2 are important and why. That is it, not putting all 5 of them. And in the option 1, because you are arranging them from the highest amount to the lowest amount, so that is a simple conclusion. You will tell examiner that the list above have been arranged from the highest amount to the lowest amount, full stop, and that's the reason of significance. In exam, option 1 is easiest to exercise. In option 2, you might still get confused because each student will have difficulty in telling the why, because students are generally weak at telling why. So you can take the option 1 to exam rather than option 2. But if you like option 2, no doubt it's not difficult, but it's just about telling that these 2 risks are important and why. Now let me show you something on my Word file and wrapping up this session. This is what I tried building up ahead of the session today. This is what the examiner is telling us in the first option on your screen now. In the first option, if you exercise that for prioritization, you give a conclusion at the end of your audit risk answer and the ROM answer. And in the conclusion, you put a heading, conclusion. And under the heading of conclusion, you say the audit risk above related to XYZ company are prioritized based on, see, you're giving your basis, based on quantitative significance from highest to lowest. So you're telling examiner that the list of the risk above have been prioritized on the basis of highest to lowest on the basis of their quantitative materiality. So that is the easiest one for option one, because your basis is high to low in terms of quantitative significance. Now, for example, there is a question which asks you evaluate and prioritize significant audit risk or ROM. And the question is for 18 marks, for example, right? And we know the marking schemes, if you have attended my webinars up till September 22, they were free. From December 22, they become paid. The marking scheme is pretty simple. We know that out of this 18 marks, will deduct the 3 marks for materiality. The statement we have to put at the top of the briefing note, because the partner will be telling us the threshold on which to put the materiality on as per the revised question 1 from September 22. And by putting that materiality paragraph, you fetch 3 technical marks, which are to be deducted from the marks allocated to audit risk and ROM. So 18 minus 3, you're left with 15 marks. And knowing that each risk now is worth 3 marks since September 22, so dividing by 3 marks per risk. So I need to find 5 risks, for example. Now, for example, my materiality for the question I have calculated as an example is $1 million as a materiality. Now, when I started looking at the case, there were numerous risks given to me in the case. There was a risk, just let me put the bullet here. I found a risk 1, I found a risk 2, I found a risk 3 when I was reading the case, risk 4, and found a risk 5, and I found a risk 6, and I found a risk 7. Now, firstly, I need to write 5, not 7. So I'll choose which 5 I am best to write on, because every time you will have more risk in the scenario than the one you need to write. So I choose the 5 good I need to write on. But with every risk, for example, the first risk is about new audit client, doesn't have a value. The second risk is about a government grant, which has a value of $2 million. This is just an example, right? The third risk I got from the case was about impairment of property, plant, and equipment, and has a value of $3 million. Then I found a fourth risk in the scenario, which was weak internal controls, again, does not have a value. Then I found the risk number 5, for example. It was about a change of accounting policy, having a retrospective effect, for example, and the impact of the change of accounting policy on the financial statement was like $1.5 million. Okay, then I found another risk, like a risk around development cost, and the amount of the development cost which was capitalized by the management, for example, was another 4 million, etc. Suppose I only have 6, right? Okay, now I found them, I just wrote them down when I was reading and planning, and I got 6 risks on my screen, knowing I need to find 5 to choose my best answer. So how would I go about it? Because I'm going with the option 1, where I need to do them in the order of highest to lowest amount. So I'll just be looking at the risk with amounts: 2 million, 3 million, 1.5, and 4 million. All of them are above materiality, which is 1 million. Now I just want to arrange them in order. So when I start writing my answer, and I need to go with the option 1, that risk above have been arranged with quantitative materiality. So when I write my answer, I'll take development cost as my first risk in my list, Control V. Then I'll take impairment as my second risk, 4 million. Then I get 3 million. Then I take my third risk, which is the government grant, 2 million. Okay, and then I take my fourth risk, which is the change of accounting policy at 1.5 million. So I've just got them in order of high to low amount. And then I need to write my fifth risk, to wrap up the answer. So I can choose any one, weak internal controls or new audit client. So I put the new audit client at number. Now, just one clarity. Any risk which does not have an accounting treatment is worth 2 marks. So the first 4 is because they're around accounting treatments. They will still be fetching 3 marks, but that means 3, 6, 9, 12. The new audit client is a risk which will fetch me 2 marks, not 3, because it doesn't have an accounting treatment. So 3, 6, 9, 12, and 2, 14. I still need to get one more risk. So I'll say internal control weaknesses, and I put them at another 2 marks, because an internal control weakness is another risk which does not have an accounting treatment. So any risk without accounting treatment is worth 2 marks. So that means the 3 mark risk is only the one where you get accounting treatments. Rest is 2. So now it's 3, 6, 9, 12, and 2, 14, and 2, 16. So slightly above 15. I'm finding my list more effective. Now, if I need to give a conclusion at the end of the day, so I'll simply say in my conclusion, this conclusion, after writing all those risks down, Control C, I bring them down here and write my conclusion that the risk above relating to XYZ company are based on their quantitative significance in comparison to materiality threshold, so from highest to lowest. Not all risks have to be arranged in order. Listen to that very carefully. Even if you place the first 2 or 3 in order, that's fine. So suppose you place the first risk at 4, good. Second at 3, good. Third at 2, good. After that, even if you don't follow any order, that's not a problem. First 2 or 3 has to be put in order of highest to lowest. Thereafter, you can do whatever you want to do. So just the first 2 and 3 is good. Rest, you can do whatever you want to do. And your conclusion is that they have been arranged on the basis of high to low. So this is a more easier approach in exam, because once you know your materiality threshold, which you will set at the start, then you start reading the case and you copy paste from the case the risk in your word processor. And suppose in your word processor, you get risk in this order, then it's very easy to arrange them on your word processor when you're answering them. So I arrange them in the order of development cost first, then impairment, then garment grant, then change of accounting policy, new audit line, internal control weaknesses. Again, the student might ask why internal control weakness last, why new audit line first? Again, there is no basis of that, because examiner wants me to prioritize the first 2 and 3. So I've just prioritized the first 2 and 3 in terms of my quantitative materiality, and that's the conclusion I've given in. Now, if you go with an option 2, which is right here, and in the option 2, examiner is telling us that you can do the answer in any format, but then you tell, okay, this and this risk is important and why. Suppose if a student takes an option 2 of the same question above, so the student goes with option 2, and you have the same situation here, which is this one. So let's just copy it down, Control C, bring it down under the option 2. So we are doing the same question now under the option 2. So we have 18 marks minus 3 for materiality. We're left with 15. So 3 marks per risk and 5. Again, the non-accounting areas are 2 marks per risk. Now I'm reading the case, and this is, while I was reading the case, this is the risk I got top down in order of case, So in order of case, this is the risk I found. So I wrote the risk in the order in which I got it. So the first risk I got was new audit client. I wrote about it. Then second, I got garment grant. Then I got impairment. Then I got weak controls. So I'm just writing them down in any order. I'm not bothered about arranging them. So that can save a lot of time in exam. Then in a conclusion, what will you do? In a conclusion, you will simply say, the audit risk above, which are of most significance to the audit of XYZ company for the upcoming audit are, the examiner was saying that try to choose any 2 of the above list and tell why 2 of the above, which 2 of the above are most significant and why. So it's not about telling all 5 of them or 6 of them or telling this comma, this comma, this comma, and that. It's just about telling 2 and why. So to me, this is my justification. It can differ from your justification. So I believe the risks which are of most significance to the audit of XYZ company for the upcoming audit are, comma, first year audit. And I justified why first year audit to me is a significant risk due to a fact that this increases the overall detection risk for the auditor, because auditor can fail, auditor can overlook the material misstatement. To me, this is a very important risk for the first year audit. So that is the reason. Look at the reason coming in red. That's what the examiner is looking for. Again, no hard and fast rules. You can have your own reasons. You can have your own justification, because there is not a single correct answer. Remember that. So to me, first year audit is an important risk. Why? Red, comma, and the audit needs to be planned carefully for the first year audit. And number two, impairment. Impairment of the property, plant, and equipment, for the reason being it is significant in terms of the quantitative materiality. It is significant in terms of its quantitative impact on the financial statement, because it's at 3 million, which is the second most. The reason being significant in terms of its quantitative impact on the financial statement, and the determination of recoverable amount involves use of estimates. So even though it's $3 million at number 2 in terms of quantitative materiality, but I believe it's significant because it uses estimates, recoverable amount. And anything where estimates comes in is risky. So $3 million is a bit more significant to me than $4 million, because it involves use of estimates. So I've given the reason for property, plant, and equipment. Now you might say, to me, from the list above, these two are more significant, like impairment and development cost, and justify the reason. Or any student can say, for me, weak internal controls are significant, and a change in accounting policy is significant, and why. Whatever risk you say is most significant, just give a reason for that. Only two is needed, and examiner is just looking for your basis. There is no correct answer. If you write basis, whatever that is, you will still be rewarded that extra professional marks for exercising judgment around prioritization. So in the option 2, you can write the answer in any order. That can save you a lot of time. But at the end of the day, in conclusion, you will look at your list of 6 above and you'll say, okay, which two I believe are more significant? Okay, you say this and this, and you justify. Okay, this is significant, why? And this is significant, why? Look at this conclusion. This is hardly one sentence long, because I'm putting a full stop right at the end. But this is the maximum length of a conclusion when you're going for option 2. Or if you choose option 1, in the option 1, you just need to rearrange them from 4.3 to 1.5, and then you bring the non-quantitative risk after. Even in the option 1, it's about the first 2 or first 3, which should be arranged in quantitative order, not all of them. So first 2 and 3 are fine. And then you give a conclusion that they are prioritized based upon the quantitative significance from highest to lowest. So that's a much shorter conclusion if you exercise the option 1. Now choose which one is relevant for you, which one is more approachable for you. I've given you the marking schemes, 3 marks per risk if you're working around accounting treatments, and 2 marks for non-accounting based risk. And I hope you're clear with option 1 and 2. That's what the examining team is looking for in terms of prioritization. Please ensure you improve your prospects here of fetching those extra professional marks around evaluation and judgment. Please read through this very carefully. All the bullets are directly taken from the examiner report for June 23, and examiner himself has given the first and second option here, and you need to choose which one is good for you. Not a single correct answer, so that's a breathing space for you, and examiner is just looking for your reasonable explanation you will give to the examiner about your justification of significant risk. And it's just about any 2 or 3 of them, not all of them. So I hope this session around the prioritization of risk would be helping you out, as well as the significance of risk. So that's very important. And evaluate was to give a conclusion. So at the end of the day, you give a conclusion. So you conclude on the basis of your significance, and you conclude on the basis of that in which order have you prioritized the significance risk. So these 3 terminologies are critical for you to understand. I hope you thoroughly enjoyed this session and you will effectively implement it in your upcoming exams. Wish you all the best of luck. Your tutor Kashif Kamran signing off from this investigation of prioritizing audit risk and ROM for the question number 1 of the AAA paper. Goodbye and Allah Hafiz.